Greetings, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. A few weeks ago, Katie over on Patreon recommended I make a video about this Facebook page called Gatekeeping Memes for Exclu Beans. All I really need to say about it is that the description of the page is LGBT is the full acronym, gates are kept for a reason, and the cover image is just a few flags that say LGBT is the full acronym, and the profile picture is the same thing as the lesbian flag, the just standard pride flag, the bisexual flag, and the trans flag, with an angry face over it, because those are obviously the only the only letters LGBT, nothing else. Basically, this page consists entirely of making fun of any identity outside of the LGBT acronym. And that is very heavily focused towards asexual and aromantic people, with also a fair bit towards pan people. And so that's what this mostly is. There's a lot of conversation around asexuality in particular, and I have a lot to say about that, so stay tuned for some oversharing that will most definitely be coming up. And so we are going to get into that, but first I would like to say a massive thank you to Katie for this video recommendation and for being a wonderful supporter of my channel, and for being a patron. I hope that you do enjoy it, and thank you so much for supporting me and this channel. And if anyone else would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/savvycat. Starts at as little as £1 a month, and I appreciate it greatly. Okay. Let's get into the exclusionary memes, shall we? Saying LGBTQIAAP2S+. Cringe. People think that's a disease. Clown energy. Saying LGBT. Based and wise. People fear you. Big gatekeeping meanie energy. Well, okay. I don't know anyone who says LGBTQIAAP2S+. I don't even know what all of those letters stand for. To be honest, I don't know what they all are, and I don't particularly think that really matters too much, because everyone typically just says LGBTQ+, or LGBTQIA+ is really the furthest I ever hear it going out, because the Q stands for queer, which embodies everyone, and the plus also lets you know that there are more letters there without you having to say them all out, because there are a lot of letters. They don't all need to be said. They can indeed just be implied, and it's really not that hard to just say the word plus, you know? You could just say the Q, because as I said, Q means queer, which is everyone. So you could just say LGBTQ, or you could LGBT plus even, if you wanted to. There is absolutely no need to exclude people from the acronym. It's just pointless. You don't need to do that. In the spirit of Aromantic Spectrum Awareness Week, let's all remember to celebrate. In the spirit of Aromantic Spectrum Awareness Week, let's all remember to celebrate by making them aware that they are not LGBT and are instead in desperate need of therapy. Funny how a page run by a bisexual person who likes to say that asexual and aromantic people are not part of the community and not oppressed should get therapy to change their orientation. You realize how that sounds, right? This is a queer person who actively fights for queer rights, right? This is someone who is actively against discrimination towards queer people and very actively anti-conversion therapy, obviously, except apparently not, because apparently conversion therapy is totally fine if it's for an orientation that they don't understand. You surely can understand and see the hypocrisy and how entirely messed up that is, right? You are actively here being people who fall under this specific orientation that I don't personally understand, they should get therapy to fix that. Does that sound familiar to you? Does it? Because I feel like that has been said to gay people for a really long time, and is still said to gay people and trans people. This is something that you are actively against is that being queer is not a choice, right? Like, you are against people getting conversion therapy for being bisexual, and yet you are promoting conversion therapy for people who are aromantic. And based off of this post, I'm sure that it is not hard to guess that asexual, aromantic people are offered conversion therapy more than anyone else. They are told they need therapy and put in conversion therapy or offered conversion therapy more than any other sexuality is. They captioned this, "My new hobby is editing educational include graphics and making them fucking accurate." And the original is a 4x4 saying, "I'm aromantic, I don't experience any romantic attraction to others. I'm grey romantic, I experience limited romantic attraction. I'm demi-romantic, I experience romantic attraction only after emotional connection. I'm aromatic, I give off a pleasant smell," which is quite amusing. And they edited this to, "I'm aromantic, I need therapy. I'm a normal person, I experience limited romantic attraction. I'm literally a fucking normal person, I experience romantic attraction only after emotional connection." And I just think you shouldn't speak on things you don't understand, really. I just think that if you personally don't understand what aromantic people are saying about their orientation, you just shouldn't speak on it. There is a difference. You might not get it because you don't experience it, but there is a difference between being like demi-romantic and grey romantic and aromantic and being a normal person, because firstly, yes, it is normal. These are normal people. Queer people are normal, and the way they experience attraction is always normal. But anyway, being like demi-romantic, for example, and like only forming romantic attraction to someone once you've developed a deep emotional connection, that is different to what everyone likes to be like, is just everyone. Because it's not. A lot of people can look at someone and only know them for a very short amount of time before deciding they want to pursue a romantic relationship with them. That is something that you can decide very early on. You can go out on like a first date and be like, "I'm interested in a romantic relationship with these people." Demi-romantic people don't do that. That's not how it works. You need a lot more time to even figure out that you have developed a romantic connection to someone. It can take a lot more than that. Like, yes, sometimes, you know, it takes that amount of time for someone who is not demi-romantic to form a romantic attraction to someone. However, this happens every time for demi-romantic people. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's not even something that they realize they're feeling until it's brought to the surface and mentioned, you know? No one. Absolutely no one. Not a single soul in the universe, I swear to you. Asexuals. I'm too ace for this shit. I mean, I don't think you have a problem with people saying I'm too gay for this shit, right? Like, that's a classic. That's like a classic thing people say. You see, like, straight people and you're like, "I'm too gay for this shit." You see, like, a fucking sex scene in a movie and you're like, "I'm too gay for this shit." Or, like, whatever. It can be a response for literally anything. And, like, it's funny. I feel like you probably don't have an issue with that. So why do you have an issue with this? Like, what's the difference? Just, like, get over it. It's funny. I'm so sick of the include aces, polyamorous people, etc. should be included in LGBT because they face discrimination too argument. Okay, fuckloads of people experience discrimination. It doesn't make them queer. If that's the case, then are all people of color queer? Are all disabled folks queer? Are all women queer? Are all homeless folks queer? Is everyone who has ever faced discrimination and oppression queer? No, stop. You're LGBT if you're L, G, B, or T. That's not to say other marginalized groups of people and the issues they face don't matter, because they absolutely do, but our resources are for us and inclusion threatens that and hurts those who actually are a part of the community. Well, there is a very clear difference between, like, being asexual and being a person of color, and that's that being asexual is a sexual identity. So yes, it falls with LGBT because those are like sexual and like gender identities, whereas being a person of color has nothing to do with that. Like, you can surely see why they're separate, right? why asexuality falls with like being lesbian, gay, bi, trans, etc., whereas being a person of color doesn't, and being disabled doesn't, because those are very separate things. So this is specifically about like a sexual identity facing discrimination, and it's hilarious to even imply that that discrimination doesn't exist when you are sitting here actively discriminating against asexual people. It's what's so funny. It's just like completely proving the point of being like, asexual people don't face any struggles. No one discriminates against them. And that's why I think they're making it up and they need therapy. And like, so people do discriminate against them very clearly. It is literally what you are doing right now. Be like, our resources are for us and their inclusion threatens that and hurts those who actually need it. Like, how are asexual people, aromantic people, like pansexual people, etc., like how are they threatening you? What are they taking from you? What is being taken from you here? Like, what resources are they hoarding? You know, like, please do elaborate. Explain to me what exactly is impacting you, because I don't get it. This is a Scooby-Doo meme. There's two of them. And it's them going to like de-hood the pansexual flag. And it says, okay gang, let's see who this really is. They pull off the hood and it's the bisexual flag. And they say, I knew it. And then it's the exact same thing, but with the demisexual flag. And it's, okay gang, let's see who this really is. Pulls off the hood and it says, just being a normal fucking human that isn't into hooking up. And like literally though, no. Like literally no. For both of these. But as far as I am aware anyway, being pansexual means that you are gender blind and gender doesn't come into consideration when it comes to choosing a partner. That doesn't matter to you. That's not something you even really like notice or like pay attention to in any way at all, and you don't have a preference. Whereas with bisexuality, gender can play a part in choosing a partner. Like that is something that you take into consideration. That is something that like may impact attraction. You may have a preference for a specific gender, and that is the difference. But in saying that, some people who fit with the label of pansexual do identify as bisexual. Because for one, like pansexual is a relatively like newer term. Like people my age, I know fit with the definition of pansexual, but when they came out, they identified as bi, so they've just like stuck with that label. And like, it doesn't matter that much, you know what I mean? Like, sure, there's not like a massive difference, but some people feel more comfortable with one label than the other, and I just don't think it matters. I just don't think it matters. People can use whatever label they feel comfortable with because it doesn't impact you. It doesn't matter. Like, I technically identify more with like the definition of pan in terms of like gender blindness, right? But I don't identify as pan, and I also don't identify as bi. I just identify as queer because that's what feels comfortable to me. And it doesn't impact you, does it? It doesn't matter because that's my identity and what makes me feel happy and me feel safe and comfortable. And as for demi, that is also absolutely not the same thing. It is not just a normal person not into hooking up. Like, yes, being demi is normal. It doesn't take away from being normal. But in terms of like the difference between being like allosexual and demisexual, it's not the same, right? When I tell you how confusing it is to me to know that people can just like look at someone and think they're like hot. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get that at all. I didn't think that was something that like people did. I didn't think that was a real fucking thing because that doesn't make sense. You can just like look at someone and decide they're like hot. You can be attracted to someone and think about like a sexual scenario with someone you barely know, someone from like a first date or someone you just glance at, someone you see on TV, whatever. People are able to look at them and have like the desire to be with them in an intimate way. That's fascinating to me. Like, I can look at a person and know they're attractive and know that they're nice to look at and aesthetically pleasing. I can see someone and be like, that is a beautiful person. But like, that's as far as my thought can get. I don't actively think that people are like hot or think of them in any other way than that's a pretty person. Finding out that people do, and that that's like a lot of people, if not a majority of people, was startling to me. It's not about actively going and having sex or not having sex with people. It's about the attraction you have to people and how that varies. A man and a woman. We would like a wedding cake, please. Homophobic baker. Okay, congratulations on getting married. A man and a woman. Okay, but will you still want to make our cake when we tell you that we didn't feel any urge to have sex with each other until we knew each other extremely well? Pretty queer, right? Homophobic baker. Why are you telling me this? This is hilarious coming from someone who is bisexual. Because what if you ended up in a heterosexual relationship? What if you, as I don't know their gender identity, as like a bisexual woman ended up with a man, or if you were a bisexual man, ended up with a woman? Like the same exact thing would happen because you'd be in a heterosexual relationship. It doesn't make you any less queer, obviously, but like a homophobic baker is still gonna bake you a cake because that's a heterosexual relationship. So like, fuck off, maybe. Has anyone else noticed that the inclues sound a lot like the people who think reverse racism is a thing? But someone was mean to me once because I'm ace, aro, white. I mean, sure, that happens. People are dicks. There are a million reasons people are bullied and made fun of, but it's not the same thing as systematic oppression. Having your feelings hurt does not make you queer. You know what does? Being L, G, B, or T. The end. Yes, there is a difference, obviously, between people being mean to you and people being oppressed and discriminated against. You are correct. But this is different to like reverse racism in every way. It is actively being discriminated against in the sense of like it is putting people actively in dangerous situations. It is actively pushing people down because of how they identify. In the same way that men say to lesbians, you've just not been with the right man yet, people say the same thing to asexual people, and that can be very dangerous. And that is so much more than just being mean. That is threatening someone for their sexuality and potentially harming them because of their sexuality. This is something that my favorite author actually has talked about before. And she figured out her asexuality through her writing, through one of her characters who is demisexual, who she didn't even know she was writing as demisexual until like afterwards people told her what that was. And she was like, oh my God, that's what I am. And so she figured it out through that. And people asked her about it a few times. And after she tweeted about the character, Neil, being asexual, someone replied and said, this is going to make me cry now. Neil helped me in so many ways to figure out my own asexuality, and I know it helped many other people too. I hope you know this little bright fact. And she said, I'm glad to hear it. He helped me too, back when people's response was, who hurt you? Or what's wrong with you? Or you just haven't met the right person yet. I know a guy who can fuck that confusion out of you. People are funny sometimes. And I very much class that as being much worse than just bullying. That is a threat to someone. That is actively making them feel abnormal and like they have to fix something and change something within themselves because of their sexuality. Like maybe it doesn't affect the right to get married, but like even in the states where you are, gay people can get married too. And you aren't saying that gay people aren't discriminated against, even though they can get married, right? Because you know it's more than that. It's deeper than that. It's about the way society views them and the way society treats them, not just about what legal rights you have. There is a difference. You know there is a difference. And while on the topic of Nora and Neil, which by the way, the series is the All for the Game series. I realize I didn't mention that. It is truly so interesting to be in a fandom space where the main protagonist of the series is asexual, is demisexual, and it is made perfectly clear. It is stated many, many times through the way he interacts with people, the way he talks about people and relationships, and through the countless times he says, I don't swing for anyone but you. And yet people still like to misinterpret it. People still love to invalidate and twist what asexuality and demisexuality means. And this goes both ways as well, which is so interesting. You have a lot of people in this space who love to say that he can't be asexual because he has sex or he participates in sexual acts and he enjoys it and he has a boyfriend, and so therefore he can't be asexual. It was never explicitly stated that he was, despite it being heavily implied and written into it, and the author tweeting that he was. People just don't like the fact that he is, and they don't think that you can be if you have sex, which is so untrue. Obviously, you can be asexual and have sex and enjoy sex, and being demisexual means that you do experience sexual attraction, just requires a little bit more. And then alternatively, you have people on the other side of that who like to portray Neil as being sex repulsed, as being like, well, he's asexual, so therefore he actually doesn't enjoy doing this with his boyfriend. He actually goes on to not have sex, to not care for it. And they write that about him, and they like to say that, you know, that's what being asexual is. And that is also a problem, because that is not who he is as a character. That is not what was written. That is not what was implied. That is not who he is. And then there's the argument of like, he's not real, so it doesn't matter. I can headcanon him how I want. But it's like, why do you want to change someone's identity? You know, I don't get that. Even in fiction, I understand like reading characters and making them queer in a way of like, you know, you can read queer subtext or whatever. But that's looking for representation that is missing. This is representation that barely exists anywhere, and people like to take it and change it and manipulate it just because it doesn't make sense to them. People like to come in and like claim that his sexuality is only there because he has faced trauma in his past. And since he is traumatized, it means that he struggles with forming those connections with people. And he is only asexual because he was abused as a child for showing any sort of interest in any sort of relationship. However, his boyfriend has experienced sexual trauma most of his life and is very not asexual. He is very allosexual, and that is also made very perfectly clear. And so the argument falls flat there. It's not because of trauma, and trauma doesn't make you asexual. And I just find it really interesting and so problematic that people seem to think that like asexuality can only be created by trauma and it's only valid if there's trauma. Like, not everyone who has experienced trauma is asexual, but everyone who's asexual has experienced trauma. Like, that's just not true. It's bullshit. Like, some people sure can be put off sex through trauma. There is a difference there. And I just find it so fascinating that people insist on changing and removing people's identities just to fit what they think is correct and what they want them to look like. This really long all for the game rant here is largely because I think we need to talk about representation and the way people take and manipulate representation, and also just because I want to express my appreciation of it. It is such good representation for not just this, but for a lot of things. It has so many fantastic conversations about trauma and boundaries and sexuality, and it just discusses a lot. It's why I've read it 3 times already this year. And it's honestly validated me a lot. It has caused me so many months. It's caused me months now of like introspection and trying to like figure myself out and think about myself and how I experience things. All this bullshit around like being asexual isn't real. And being asexual doesn't mean you're queer. It doesn't mean you're a part of the LGBTQ plus community. It's not a part of that. You don't fit here. You're not discriminated against. It's not a difficult thing. Is so funny to me. In a not funny way, obviously, because like I talk here a lot about my queerness, obviously, right? And I've said many times, queerness is not something that ever felt abnormal to me. It's not something that I ever lost sleep over. It's not something that ever made me feel scared or abnormal or broken or anything at all. It's just something that I am and have always accepted and never cared to think much about. However, asexuality and questioning that has eaten me up inside for months, years even. I've never put this much thought into my identity before. It's never been something that has caused me stress or concern or kept me up at night. But I have sat on this for years, and I go through periods of time where it like comes up and I think about it, but I like push it away and don't want to name it and don't want to think about it because I just haven't wanted to deal with it. But recently though, it really started gnawing at me. It really started singing to me, and like I started thinking about it a lot. And it was actually sparked by reading these books, or more specifically, it was sparked by reading fanfics, because people dive into talking about asexuality and demisexuality. And there's a lot of ace people in the fandom who are writing these fics and talking about it. And as I've read people like diving into it and explaining it and talking about it, it's really made me do a lot of thinking. And I have been trying to piece it together. I have been talking about it in therapy. I've spent so many like sleepless nights and so much time just going over it in my head and trying to make sense of it. And it feels weird to say out loud. It feels weird to talk about. I have never been comfortable with labels when it comes to my sexuality, so it's unsurprising that like using a word like asexual also feels uncomfortable, because that's just not something I've ever done for myself. But it's weird saying it out loud, and it's hard talking about it, and it's hard thinking about it. I never had that fear before, and that feeling of discomfort, that feeling of being abnormal, that feeling of brokenness. That's not something I ever experienced when it came to thinking about being queer in terms of not caring about gender. However, it is a very big part of how it feels while thinking about this. When everyone talks about something like it is the best thing in the world, like it is the most normal thing ever, that it is everywhere and that everyone loves it, and that if you don't enjoy it, you're doing it wrong, that something is wrong with you, that this is part of life and an important part of life for everyone, it's very easy to feel wrong and like you aren't normal and that you must be doing something wrong and it is something you need to fix. Especially for me personally, trauma does come into play. And you obviously, as I said, you don't need trauma in order to be asexual. That is not at all like something that you need. They are two separate things. But also, as I said, for some people, trauma does play a part. And that makes it very confusing for me because I do have sexual trauma. That is something that I do experience. And sitting here and not knowing where trauma ends and I begin is very, very confusing and complicated. Would this be different if I didn't experience that? Would I still feel the way that I do if I had earlier healthy relationship with sex and my body and consent? And I'll never know. And it doesn't matter, but it is frustrating. When I was 14, I got my first crush, which makes me feel like maybe it would have been there regardless, because most people I know had crushes before that point. But anyway, also the person I had a crush on was my boyfriend. And we got together, and after a few months, the abuse started, right? That went on for 2.5 years. And after that, I tried desperately to reclaim my body and my sexuality and make it mine again. I wanted to prove that I could enjoy sex. I wanted to prove that I could say yes and mean it. I wanted to take away the old memories and make it good and feel like I had some sort of control over what happened to my body. And it was always boring. It was so boring. Like I said, like people feel sexual attraction, can feel it pretty quickly. You think someone's hot and then like you can go on a date and have sex. And like I did that. I could do that. I go on a date, we'd hook up, but it wasn't a good time. It was boring. I didn't feel like actually actively attracted to these people. It's just what I wanted to do because I felt like I needed to do that and because I wanted to feel something, you know? I wanted to take back the control, yes, but I also wanted to feel something. I wanted to feel what people talk about you feeling. And that extends beyond just like casual hookups or whatever and into people I was in like longer relationships with as well. Not just people I met that day, but people I continued seeing for like a few months at a time kind of thing, you know? And now that I've sat on that for a while, I've sat on the fact that like it was boring and I don't experience what other people always talk about experiencing. It's scary and upsetting because I want that. It's talked about like it's so magical and there's that beautiful closeness, and obviously that makes me want it because everyone says that I need it, that that's what makes a relationship whole, that your life is missing something if you don't have that, and that if you don't feel those things, then you can't truly love someone and no one will truly love you. And it's all just bullshit, you know? Like, why, if someone doesn't feel that way, does it mean that we're worth any less? Like, I'm less lovable because I don't feel attraction in the same way. Like, I'm less lovable because I don't look at someone and think, wow, they're hot. I want to climb them like a tree. Like, that makes my worth less than someone else. That makes my life like it's missing something. I just think we need to rephrase, you know what I mean? Like, sure, for some people, it's a beautiful, wonderful thing, but you don't have to have that in order to be a whole person and have very fulfilling and lovely and wonderful relationships. And they can still be sexual relationships too. Like, sex still feels good. Not to everyone, obviously, but like there is pleasure in it. It's still something that feels good to most people, regardless of how they experience attraction. So you can still be with like an allosexual person and be asexual. You just experience it differently. And I don't see how that's an issue. And I don't see why we need to talk about it like it's making someone less valuable and less lovable and like their love means any less than anyone else's does. But it's hard to remember that sometimes, you know, because you do read about it and hear about it as though sex and attraction are the most important parts of relationships, that is such a big, important thing that if you don't have, your relationship is failing. And it's so easy to feel that way coming from both sides. Like, if you are in a relationship with an asexual person, you can feel like you aren't desired because they aren't expressing their attraction to you in the way that you want to, in the way that you think they should because of how we're told attraction should be expressed, etc. It makes it difficult. And that's why representation is so important. And that is why we need more asexual representation. That is why we need more Neil Justins and Todd Chavez's, and I can't think of any other asexual characters, but we need them because they help explain to people that we're all different and we experience things differently, and our relationships can still be valid and beautiful and thriving and fulfilling despite experiencing things differently. So like, it's all well and good to sit here and say like, no one cares if you do and don't have sex. No one cares that you don't want to have sex with anyone. No one cares that you need to develop an emotional connection in order to feel attraction. But that's not true. It's just not true. Everyone makes everything their business, and people hate what they don't understand. Why do you think we don't have any asexual representation? Why do you think that doesn't exist? It's because people don't get it, and people don't think it's real, and people think it's made up, and that it's something that needs to be fixed and you need to get therapy for. If it wasn't something that was viewed negatively and as wrong and broken, we would see more of it. But we don't. We see practically none. It barely exists. And I think that alone speaks for itself, no? It's funny because everyone everywhere from every side thinks that it's something that can be fixed and that it is something you just need therapy for and that no one cares. And it's like, you're proving the point though, aren't you? Like, you are sitting at the same table as like Matt Walsh on this issue, right? Like, he has a whole video saying how like asexual people just need therapy. How does it feel to align yourself with the likes of like Matt Walsh? You know, like, this is the thing, is that if your morals and values are, as a queer person, are lining up with like Matt Walsh, I think you need to do some rethinking. It's one of the things I try to do when I see people that I disagree with agreeing with me, I'm like, okay, do I need to think this through? Do I need to do some reflection here? It was London Pride recently, and an asexual person led the parade. They were at the front, and they tweeted about it saying, I did it. It was an honor to be the first asexual person to lead Pride in London. Asexual representation matters. Our recognition matters. Our protection matters. Our voices matter. We matter. Thank you all for your support throughout the day. This is what asexual looks like. And she's wearing like just a like purple bra top with like chaps and fishnets, and it's a fucking sick outfit. She looks fantastic. But naturally this really pissed off a lot of people because, you know, everyone has shit to say about this, because although asexual people are not discriminated against, everyone really likes to be really awful towards them. So this person tweeted, today, a heterosexual woman fronted the March for Lesbians and Gay Rights movement. Her low libido issues apparently is what will get her arrested or KILL'd if she stepped foot in the Middle East. The first day of Pride, a heterosexual couple was married to celebrate Pride. This is a heterosexual hostile takeover of the LGBT... No, not LGBT, sorry, this is a transphobe. This is a heterosexual hostile takeover of the LGBT rights movement. Anyone who supports this is homophobic. It's so funny because this just straight up proves exactly why it's necessary. It proves entirely that you don't understand what you're talking about by calling it specifically a libido issue, which means you are refusing to listen to people talk about what it actually is because you don't care for it. It's funny because like you can grasp the idea that you are sexually attracted to other women and that you are not sexually attracted to men. So you know what that lack of attraction feels like, right? So surely you can just apply that and understand that this is that, but for everyone. Like, surely it's not that difficult to figure out that it's different to your low libido. You don't want to have sex with men, not because you have a low libido, but because you aren't attracted to men, right? It's the same as being like, you just haven't had sex with the right man yet. Like, it's got nothing to do with your libido. It's got everything to do with your attraction. Surely you can gather that. And saying it's not something that puts you in danger. You see what happens when women reject men. You see what happens when men find out women are lesbians. You see how much pressure is put on men to have high libidos and high sex drives. You see what happens when women deny their partners of sex. Like, you see all of this happening. You are aware that this is happening. There are consequences to not wanting to have sex. There are consequences to rejecting people's sexual advances. It can impact relationships of all sorts. It can hurt you physically and put you in unsafe situations. It's put me in unsafe situations. Like I said, I went out of my way to have a lot of casual hookups trying to figure out what was wrong. And there is a big crossover between hypersexuality and asexuality from people trying to figure it out and trying to fix what is broken, because society tells us that it is an us issue and it is something we need to fix. And that you just need to find the right person. You just need practice. You just need communication. And saying that you aren't going to get hurt because of your lack of sexual attraction is just incredibly naive and ignorant, and is something you're actively choosing to avoid. You also get a ton of really fun replies, because of course you do, with things like this, which is an umbrella. There's an LGB umbrella, which is lesbian, same-sex attracted females, gay, same-sex attracted males, bisexual, females attracted to both sexes, males attracted to both sexes. And that's the fun little LGB umbrella. And then you've got the TQI2A+, which is obviously ridiculous. And you have straight women who identify as trans, straight men who identify as trans, questioning anyone who says they're questioning their sexuality, anyone who demands special pronouns, anyone who says I'm non-binary, anyone who identifies as queer, asexual, anyone who does not experience sexual attraction to anyone, including straight people, ally, anyone who identifies as an ally, intersex, all intersex people regardless of their sexual orientation, straight people. Again, literally straight people. Okay, well, most of these I think are completely valid to be under this umbrella. Like, yes, trans people can be straight, but their gender makes them discriminated against because they don't identify with the gender they were assigned at birth. I feel like we don't need to go into a whole trans conversation here. These are transphobes. Obviously, they don't get it. They choose not to get it. Trans people, including heterosexual trans people, absolutely do belong in the queer community. The Q does not stand for questioning. Once upon a time, people like to say the Q standard for questioning. Maybe people did say it stood for questioning. It hasn't for a very long time now. It is queer, and queer encapsulates everyone. Li, the A does not stand for ally. The A stands for asexual, who do in fact deserve to be there. Refer to the entire video I've just made. Ally, that's not one of the letters. Allies are not part of the queer community. No one thinks they are except maybe them. Anyone who says I'm non-binary, yep, anyone who is non-binary does also belong with queer people because they are queer. Anyone who self-identifies as queer, I don't know what that means. Like, people who identify as queer are identifying as queer because they're queer. Like, yes, anyone who identifies as queer does fit under the LGBTQ plus community because they're queer. That typically means something about their gender or their sexual identity. You can't just say you're queer if you're not. And if you are just saying you're queer and you're not, then no, you don't fit under the LGBTQ plus umbrella because you're not queer. You're just saying that you are. Two-spirit, I didn't read two-spirit before, is in layman's terms anyone who is gender non-conforming. I mean, two-spirit is a Native American thing, is it not? Like, that's like a sacred thing. I don't think you can sit here and just like invalidate an entire thing that's like thousands of years old. I think they deserve to be there too because they are gender non-conforming and they do fit under the queer umbrella, regardless of what you have to say about it or not. Intersex people also, gender shit does belong under the queer umbrella. If you aren't cis, you do fit here. And then naturally, of course, the other things that this woman is experiencing in her replies and quote retweets are people talking about the way that she is dressed and saying she obviously can't be asexual because she's dressed so immodestly. If she was asexual, why would she be dressing as an object of desire? Why would you show so much skin? Why can I see her boobs and her thighs and her midriff? Like, she's clearly not asexual. Are you saying that clothes mean consent? Are you victim blaming here? Are you gonna like watch a woman get sexually assaulted and be like, well, you asked for it for what you were wearing? Because that's what it sounds like. Because I don't know if you heard, but the clothes you wear does not actually have anything to do with who you want to have sex with. It doesn't have anything to do with your intentions for anything other than, I look cute in this outfit. And like, she does. She looks great. She looks fucking fantastic. This is a brilliant outfit and she felt good and she looked good and that's all that matters. She's not dressing for people to sexualize her. If you're looking at her and sexualizing her, that's on you. That's entirely on you. You don't have to do that. Don't do that, actually. She didn't consent to being sexualized, so like, stop it. This went wildly off topic. I got far too personal, but I think I just needed to talk about it and get it off my chest a little bit. Because I've not really talked about it and because I always want to be honest with all of you and I want to be honest in a way that like hopefully helps people because talking through shit here, I get comments saying that it helps and genuinely it means the world. Every time I see people say that I've helped them in any way, like it makes my entire day. And I also find that it helps me too. Just talking through stuff, the more I say things and the more I share, the more easy it feels for me to accept it myself. Like saying shit out loud is so therapeutic, you know? And if I'm able to help you and myself at the same time, I think that that's fantastic. That is such a win. And so in saying that, I hope that me talking through my own shit today has helped anyone at all. I hope that it's helped give a better perspective on asexuality and the struggles that come with it and just queerness in general. Overall, obviously, I think we need better representation for asexual and aromantic people. I think that that's really important. Representation in all forms is so important for everyone. And I'm really, really glad that an asexual person got to lead Pride this year, and I think it's very evident as to why that was important, and I think it's fucking hilarious that everyone who disagrees are proving exactly why it was. So yeah, I hope that my honesty today helped any of you out at all. And I hope that you all know that like you are so valid in who you are, and if the people around you don't accept you for who you are, I am incredibly sorry. Figuring yourself out can be really scary, and it shouldn't be, but it is. We live in a society that makes it very easy to hate being different. And it makes it very easy to feel abnormal and like you have something to fix, but you don't. We all are wonderful as we are, you know, as long as you aren't hurting yourself or anyone, then you are absolutely free to be yourself. And I hope that, you know, you're able to figure out who that is. And I hope you know that you're able to change that as you grow and learn, as I am currently growing and learning more about myself and figuring that out. I hope that you are able to allow yourselves the same liberties. I hope that you have somewhere safe to be. I hope you have people who love and support you. And if you don't, I hope that you're able to find that here, at least. I hope that you feel safe with me. And I know that it's obviously not the same, but I know how helpful like parasocial relationships can be to any degree. And I genuinely mean it when I say that I am proud of you, and I respect you, and I love you, and I support you, and I hope that you are able to find peace within yourself someday. And I'm so grateful to you. And I hope that I'm able to help out in any way and make you feel safe and represented or whatever, you know? Anyway, with that, I'm going to leave this video here, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe while you're down there. I put out videos every few days, so I'd appreciate it, and I'd love to see you again soon. A massive thank you to my Sprout and Above patrons whose names are up on the screen right now. I appreciate you greatly. And a huge thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons: Bobby, Josh, Mandy, Ikazel, Jessica, Eldo, Danielle, Elias, Chris, Samuel, Radsack, Mr. Noodle, Jonathan, and Bonbon. I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining. If anyone else would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/savvycat. Click the top link in the description. For as little as £1 a month, you get my videos early, as well as podcasts early when we do podcasts again. And then for £3 and up, you get things such as outtakes, bonus mini podcasts, live streams, vlogs, and more. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, The Queer Kiwi, and Twitter, That Queer Kiwi. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah.